Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another edition of the Daily Crypto Byte. Today is Wednesday, July 14th, and it's Wednesday, so that means we got the Crypto Kid on with his special segment today. We'll get to that in a bit. First, we got a couple of interesting headlines coming out of Europe, one specifically with the European Central Bank, and then another one with England. They've been talking a lot about cryptocurrency over the last week, so we'll hit those headlines, tell you what that means for crypto. And also I wanted to touch on some Ethereum price action as well, because we had a pretty significant move last night as it dipped below 2K and retested some critical levels around 1800. So big moves happening to the downside for ETH. We'll touch on that and more. But before we jump into it, CJ, how are you doing, my friend?
Doing well, thanks, Monty. Big news coming out of Europe here with potential digital currency being formed. Do you want to tell us a little bit about that? And then we also have kind of news that complements that news as well coming out of the Bank of England. So do you want to take it away, my friend?
Yes, absolutely. Let's hop right into this. So let me first get the disclaimers out of the way. But yeah, so like you said, CJ, big news coming out of Europe. I'll start with the piece about the European Central Bank. Let me pull up this article headline real quick for you guys. But here it is, the ECB poised to take next step in revolutionizing eurozone money. So what does that mean? So the European central banks are looking to take a next step in reinventing the region's money. And if you know anything about EU politics and what's been going on there over the last few years, not just in terms of monetary policy, but also in terms of, internet privacy, that's been a huge concern over there. So the fact that they're going with this digital currency now, I think they're gonna get a lot of pushback from the public. But one thing that they do talk about in this article is, they're looking to create a digital currency that balances privacy and also usability. That's kind of counterintuitive in my opinion. I think that more often than not, these digital currencies will hinder the privacy of the demographic that they're targeted towards. I think that European citizens, they would have a little bit less anonymity in terms of their ability to purchase things if this were to go through. But it's interesting to note that they are taking these things into concern. But to kind of harp on privacy, I think that's kind of not necessarily all that genuine, especially when you're following in the footsteps of a country like China. They're rolling out their digital currency, and the EU wants to follow suit. I'm not sure that privacy is the best, best reason to fall back on here. I think that people realize that their intentions are, elsewhere. But so they had some pretty interesting quotes. They say it will touch people's life in a very intimate way. What we've heard from people is that they want privacy to be protected, but at the same time, we need to make sure that it's not accelerating money laundering or the financing of terrorism. Pretty typical, rhetoric you hear when talking about crypto. You got the money laundering and the financing of terrorism, but also the privacy aspect, right? I think that, that second half, the money laundering and the financing of terrorism, that sort of fear, that FUD that you see associated with these issuing of digital currencies is kind of to offset that, that lack of privacy that would be associated with this currency being rolled out. So interesting stuff all around. There's a lot of countries that are exploring, the feasibility of a central bank digital currency. It's not just the EU. It's also happening in Russia. It's also happening in Canada, and many other, major countries throughout the world, like even Spain and Portugal, are exploring, some of the feasibility of a central bank digital currency. So this is something that's definitely going to become more commonplace over the next few years. We're going to see a lot more governments coming forward and putting this into place. And I think it makes sense. It makes sense because if they don't take these steps, if they're not proactive in issuing a digital currency, then they risk, the debasement of their own currency by some foreign asset. And they run the risk of allowing all of their citizens to be, using a different payment network than the one that their central bank is backing. So interesting stuff here coming out of the EU. I don't think too much is going to come out of it yet, but I wouldn't be surprised if we see that lively discourse between, privacy and usability start to really pop up in the coming weeks as this is explored more deeply. But that's all I got for that news article, CJ. But I know you had another one as well regarding England.
This one is very closely related. It's just a positive sentiment coming out of the Bank of England Deputy Governor, Jon Najarian, and he told CNBC that cryptocurrencies don't pose a serious threat to financial stability in terms of the Bank of England. And so obviously that's good. They're coming a little bit more favorable to cryptocurrencies. But I do want to touch on your privacy discussion with central bank digital currencies, because I just watched the movie Snowden again, literally yesterday. So this is kind of funny. But in his career for the CIA and NSA, his magnus opus was to build this massive centralized database for this search engine where you could search for people's text messages, people's cameras that could turn on at a switch of a button, people's emails. And so having that prism in one centralized figure is incredibly beneficial for surveillance in terms of the government's perspective. It's not great for the average citizen and their privacy, but it's kind of just the world we live in now, what we sacrifice for convenience. But let's talk about the pros and the cons of a central bank digital currency. The pros are that anyone can have a bank account. You're not going to be restricted, presumably, based on funds that you put in the account. You're probably not going to get charged for a minimum. And it enables financial inclusivity among many citizens in the world. It's kind of like just being in Chicago and having a Ventra card or something like that sort. So that's where it's positive. The negative is that they're going to create a database that tracks all blockchain transactions, where each wallet has a personal ID. So virtually any transaction that you make loses complete anonymity, and they have a bunch of data and that they can conglomerate and monitor, which is good for national security in some instances, but I think it's a bit overreach just personally. But the good news is that when you eliminate cash and privacy from a society, and an instance where you literally can't tip somebody without having the government know about it because it's on a transparent ledger, that's going to make Bitcoin and other privacy cryptocurrencies very desirable, I think, in the coming future. But of course, we'll see how the market evolves throughout time. But overall, I see those as the pros and cons. And that's all I got.
Yeah, I think that about sums it up, CJ. Those are the kind of the two main pieces of news that have been hitting the market cycle over the last 24 hours. So we thought we'd bring those to your attention. But one other thing that's been, prevalent on the mind of crypto investors over the last 24 hours, CJ, is the price action we've been seeing in ETH. ETH has been somewhat breaking down here. We have been talking a lot about the 200 simple moving average, which is indicated by this pink line right here. And as you can see, 2 days ago, we got a break below this level and a close below this level. And that was a cause for concern for a lot of, traders on Twitter and also members of our community as well. As you can see, this pattern kind of continued, and we got a very nice bounce off this one critical level that we've been talking a lot about in our room at about 1886. This level was established by a TD by 9 just a few weeks ago back here. And this level has, more or less held up over the recent weeks. That being said, we haven't tested it too much in the last couple of weeks. So this is our first real test of this level, and we're hitting it with some pretty significant sell pressure. That being said, we got a nice bounce. We're forming a bit of a hammer candle here, but on very, very low volume, as you can see. So I'm going to give some price targets here for Ethereum, a couple of possible scenarios I could see playing out here. One, first and foremost, is a chance of a bounce off this level of 1886. I think that's definitely possible. We're already seeing somewhat of a positive price action following hitting this critical level. If that does play out, I wouldn't be too surprised if we went up to retest this smooth moving average here, indicated by the white line. As you can see, just on the way down here, this has acted as tremendous resistance to the upside. So I'd be very surprised if we were able to break above this level. I just don't think we currently have sufficient momentum to do so. Another scenario would be breaking down below this level of 1886. And the next critical level we have is at about 1750, which was established by this massive wick down we had during that initial move of Ethereum when it began to sell off, in the middle of May there. So this is a level we haven't really tested beyond this this week period where we kind of lingered around this price range. So I'm expecting this 1800 level to hold up at least in the interim. But if it does break, look for a retest of this level of about 1750, which is a historically critical level for ETH. So seeing a bit of a sell-off in ETH, but it seems like the bleeding has stopped for now. And yeah, do you have any thoughts on the current Ethereum price action, CJ?
Yeah, I do want to talk more about ETH because we are seeing a very bullish hammer candle after kind of that fall last night and then the recovery subsequently today. But before we do that, I want to cut to Chase Leon, the crypto kid, very special guest, of course, we have each week on Wednesdays. Chase, how you doing, buddy? How's your crypto journey been going? What's new?
I'm doing good. Thank you very much, CJ. I did earn $50, but I did not buy crypto as I'm planning to buy 3D printer so I can print things to sell for Bitcoin. I'm going to talk about Kudo Miner because I can choose to be paid in 4 different cryptos. The cryptos are Bitcoin, Monero, Algorand, and Ethereum. Right now, I'm currently mining Monero and getting paid in Bitcoin. I earn about 3,000 sats per week. After reaching the payment threshold, I'm also going to switch to pay out Monero because the withdrawal threshold and the transaction fees are lower. So Monero has an atomic swamp where I can convert my Monero to Bitcoin directly from my wallet. I currently hold Bitcoin, Garlic Coin, Litecoin, Monero, and Doge. What I see the biggest challenge for a kid is the KYC requirements. For on most exchanges, I would like to see that made easier.
Yeah, that's a great point, Jason. I'm glad you're talking about both Kudo Miner and KYC today because a lot of our members have been asking about those two things specifically. So I just have a quick question for you. In your process of, setting up your Kudo Miner and getting this all started, was that a difficult process? What was that like?
We weren't planning on doing Kudo Miner. We were going to do Pirate Chain, but I couldn't because, as I said last time, it's the GPU. I'm on a laptop. But yeah, Kudo Miner was pretty simple to set up. All I had to do was click what I wanted to mine and what I wanted to get paid in. So right now I'm currently mining Monero and getting paid in Bitcoin. But it was pretty simple. I like Kudo Miner. It's really cool. I finally got.
I have a question about the 3D printing that you brought up earlier. What kind of items would you sell or 3D print?
Maybe I would 3D print. I do have, because my grandpa has 3D printers. Maybe I would print little Bitcoin symbols like he does. He prints he's right now printing keychains for somebody. It says freebitcoins.com. He ordered flexing filament so they can flex. But he also printed me something about this big, and it's a Bitcoin, and you could spin it, kind of like a little top, but not a top. It's a circle in the inside, and you could spin the Bitcoin sign. It's really cool. I mean, Yeah.
Well, that's very entrepreneurial of you. Of course, Jon Najarian is buds with Kevin O'Leary, maybe some type of Shark Tank connection there in the future. But anything you'd like to leave us with today, Chase, as we kind of wrap up?
As I said a few weeks ago, I did say that I sent my USB Litecoin miner to FutureBit. I finally got it back. It's up and running, and it's running perfect.
Awesome.
That's great to hear. Great to hear. Well, thank you so much, Jace, as always. Very informative session. We love to hear from you. Have a great rest of your week, and we will see you again next Wednesday.
Thank you very much.
Take care, my man. Well, CJ, not too much else going on. Anything you wanted to, leave our audience with before we sign off today? We do have a member webinar coming up in a couple hours, but anything you want to get to before that?
Yeah, I do want to just recap ETH and Bitcoin a little bit because, like you had said, we're making a higher low, and we are on a bullish hammer candle on ETH on a critical support level being 2,000. We'll see if we can rally here in the next 9 hours. I think that's going to dictate a lot, and we actually may get a regression to that 20 smooth moving average in ETH. What I'm a little bit more concerned about is Bitcoin. Now that we've really broken down from that symmetrical triangle, and now that upward sloping trend line is kind of acting as resistance on a throwback. And so we're seeing a tentative resistance level there, and we've dropped into more of a descending triangle now that we're hitting, consistent support levels while also making lower highs. So traditionally, those are continuation patterns being bearish. So that is a little concerning that we may break down. I think if we go below 31K, there's a potential that we might get some waterfall action down to say 28. Being full on capitulation, then I think that would likely be the most probable bottom at that point, depending on how price kind of reacted. But when we look at things like macro oscillators, when we look at things like massive decreasing volume and open interest in the derivatives markets, all of these conditions are hinting that the bottom is near, regardless if we have one more leg down or not. So I've said it for weeks now, I'm comfortable scaling in below 33K and all the way down to say 25K. But being said, nothing inherently bullish with BTC until that upward sloping trend line is negated, in my opinion.
Yeah, I'm inclined to agree with you, CJ. And I have a question I want to pose to you here. You mentioned with ETH, we're seeing some somewhat bullish indicators here with that hammer candle. Do you think that if we did get a reversal back to that smooth moving average, what would that mean for a lot of these, downstream altcoins like DeFi assets? Do you think we'd see movement in those, even with Bitcoin being in this sort of precarious state that you just were mentioning?
Yeah, I think the alts would probably follow ETH moreover in these types of market conditions, especially with the DeFi kind of landscape. Of course, Bitcoin is still going to dictate a lot. And if Bitcoin remains neutral and ETH rallies, I think we could definitely see potential for a reaction rally in the alts. Nothing goes up or down in a straight line. And so despite, a bearish posture in the trend, a regression to the moving average is probably enough in my mind to bring up a lot of alts with it. Being said, it's not the most probabilistic trade in terms of like risk reward ratio. Nonetheless, I do think that is possible. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with you, CJ. And one thing we talked about earlier this weekend, the end of last week, was looking for some of those DeFi assets and, altcoins that are above their smooth moving average as opposed to below their smooth moving average. A lot of those have, come back down and retested that smooth moving average, but are still above it. So I think that those assets that, have less resistance to the upside would likely be the benefactors of an ETH move back up to, the 2200 level. But that's something we'll have to wait and see. One thing that, I'm looking at this ETH chart right now. We got to get past that 200 simple moving average, and we just need more bullish volume right now. The volume today is just still very, very low. I think if we can get enough volume today to eclipse the last 2 days of volume, that'd be a very very bullish indicator for me. And I would consider, not only entering an ETH position, but also looking at some of those altcoins that we were talking about. So interesting stuff. Interesting stuff. We'll cover that and more today in our member webinar. That's at 11:30 Central. You can drop in, ask us questions. We'll do some TA on any asset you want. We'll talk about any news-related articles you want. Pretty much our time is yours for that hour. And if you're not yet a member, you can sign up for just $1 for the first month at the link right below me. It's markrebellion.com/try crypto. And you'll get access to that member webinar. You'll get access to our pro charting service, 24/7 chat with a community of traders from all around the world. I was in there last night chatting with some guys at like midnight about ETH. There's always people in there chatting. And then also we publish actionable trading sites with entries like stop losses. And last but certainly not least, we have an extensive education curriculum. And CJ's really been flushing out the technical analysis section, really been adding some awesome value there. So check that out. All of that's included in your $1 membership. CJ, looks like you got
Yeah, one thing I'll say about the education is that I think we're almost done with the first wave of like TA. You know, we're going through all of the candlestick theory, all of the support and resistance, then the momentum oscillators and really in depth. So we're going to finish that one soon. And then I want to start a new chapter known as advanced concepts in technical analysis. And that goes into Elliott wave theory and a lot of other things. I know that's very contentious, especially among the analysts at Market Rebellion, but nonetheless, I think that we should learn the material, understand it objectively, and then decide for ourselves whether or not we can use it with enough efficacy to make money. So also thank you to Voyager for sponsoring this show. Don't forget, you can trade there commission free and earn up to 9% interest in USDC. 1% interest, you get that boost if you hold over a certain amount of VGX tokens. So that's really awesome. I love doing that in my personal holdings. And don't forget, you can also get 12% interest APY on Polkadot. So really big selling point there. But thank you to Voyager for that. Thank you everyone for watching, and we hope to see you soon.